Well, what stole the headlines yesterday? It was the headlines of Mark Carney going south of the border to finally talk to Donald Trump, and that was all the talk of yesterday. So much talk that other things took place yesterday that simply missed the radar because we were all so fixated on the whole meeting, how it was going to go. How was Carney going to represent Canada? What was Trump going to say? What was Trump going to do? Did Trump land-based him? Did Carney pansy out? That was all the conversation yesterday. But again, what's been happening since the election? The re-election of the Liberal government. The election of Mark Carney as being ahead of that Liberal government. Separation talks have started. You know, the thing we've been warning people of, if you re-elected this Liberal government, national unity crisis that we have not seen in our lifetimes, especially people who are my age, that we have not seen since the referendum days of Quebec. But it's only gotten worse because that was one province. Now we're talking about 3 provinces, and we're going to talk about it all today, on top of finding out how the Liberal government has been spying on citizens who held the wrong beliefs. And no, I'm not talking about the 2022 convoy. We're talking about other issues. And we're going to get all into that right now. But first, take time to like, share, and subscribe. It's so great to have you here on the show with me. So great to have a chance to talk. So great to be able to share different ideas. And so if you find this show interesting, you find this episode valuable, please take time to like this video, share with your friends. And if you're not yet subscribed or YouTube has unsubscribed you from our show because we're too electric for this platform, feel free to hit the subscribe button. Now let's get into the show. As we were saying, separation talks have started up and kicked up in a huge way. They started really back in 2019 after the re-election of the Trudeau government. 2021, things are kind of convoluted with the COVID stuff, but there were still some talks of it. But man, it spiked like no tomorrow. 2025, as soon as the Liberals took another minority government. And it's the very thing we've been warning on the show for far too long. We told the Liberals in the GTA, told the Liberals in the city centers, if you vote Liberal, you are essentially kowtowing to Donald Trump, which we saw yesterday. You're essentially voting for kowtowing to China, which we have been seeing. And you're essentially voting for a unity crisis in this country that we've never seen before. You thought Quebec in 95 was crazy. Well, it's about to get even crazier. And that's what we're witnessing. The vote goes through. Liberals win the minority. Quebec talking about, it's looking pretty good. Alberta definitely saying, hey, let's talk referendum. Danielle Smith comes out and says, hey, we're dropping the threshold to hear people out. And Saskatchewan is also joined in on the party. Is it all bluster or is there action behind it? Well, Mr. Doug Ford made sure to get in a pulpit yesterday talking about this very issue and talking about how we have a great prime minister who's in DC right now talking to Donald Trump and we need to have a unified Canada. And here are the waterworks from Mr. Doug Ford.
We always believe in something called the AMCAN Fortress, the American-Canadian Fortress. We put a ring around it. We'd be unstoppable anywhere in the entire world. We'd be the wealthiest, richest 2 nations in the world and the safest 2 nations. And, you know, all he's trying to do, and we wish him, I forget about political stripes, by the way. We have a prime minister down there, and he's going to be sitting down, and he's going to give it everything he can. This is a time to unite the country. Not people saying, oh, I'm leaving the country, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that. You know, united we stand, divided we fall. And we have to be united Canada together to fight President Trump's tariff.
We have to be united to fight Donald Trump's tariffs. I think the thing that's most hilarious about this is he gave this, and this was released about an hour before Carney sat down with Donald Trump. We have to fight against Trump's tariffs. Well, guess what? This already looks outdated, and this is only a day old. Because Mark Carney, elbows went down, diplomacy went up, and placating began. That's what happened yesterday. And Mr. Doug Ford looks like a fool now, saying we have to do all in on Canada. We have to fight Donald Trump. My friend, the man you put all your money on is not fighting Donald Trump. I hate to admit it, hate to tell you, that's what happened. And Danielle Smith got word of this, and she was asked her response to Doug Ford's comments.
Well, Doug and I have a great friendship. We don't agree on everything. In fact, I think we supported different people in the last federal election. And so we don't have to agree on everything. But what I will say is we have a constructive conversation at the coffee table. I continue to look forward to having a constructive conversation with him at the coffee table. But he's the Premier of Ontario. I'm the Premier of Alberta. We just have different issues that we have to respond to in our respective jurisdictions. I don't tell him how he should run his province, and I would hope that he doesn't tell me how I should run mine. But we have a very respectful relationship, and I hope that continues. As most Albertans know, I have repeatedly stated I do not support Alberta separating from Canada. I personally still have hope that there is a path forward for a strong and sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. So I am going to do everything within my power to negotiate a fair deal for Alberta with the new Prime Minister. My party quite clearly in their founding documents came together and they support a strong, united Canada. Protecting constitutional sovereignty, and that's what I've been doing. A citizen-initiated referenda would be, by definition, initiated by citizens. And so I won't prejudge what issues citizens might want to put on the table, but that is up to citizens to decide and to get the number of signatures. All I've said is I will honor the process. I think if an election were held today, it would get about 30% support. So that's why I want to make sure that those numbers do not get higher and those numbers end up going lower because we're successful in negotiating.
What a diplomatic response. Doug Ford is, quite frankly, a fool. And he's made himself look like that time and time and time again. And there he is again. People talking about separate. No, we got to come together. And the way he keeps throwing darts and has thrown darts at Poilievre, has thrown darts at Danielle Smith at times, making her look like a villain through this whole process. And here she is yet again, taking it with such poise, such grace. Like, yeah, we have a good relationship. You know, I'd hope he'd actually mind his own business and not talk about me, as that talk about our business here in Alberta, as we would not talk about Ontario's business. And I'd hope he'd respect that. And does so in such a polite way, killing him with kindness, but telling him what's up. And it was interesting to hear her say, like, I don't support a referendum on separation. However, I will honor the process. That's the difference between a leader and someone who's just going to tell you what's up and the government getting involved with your life. She's open about how she wants to make sure that's the last thing that happens. But if that's what the people want, she'll honor that. And this is the sentiment that's been going on. The sentiment that's been building between the East and the West for far too long. The East has been spitting on the West, telling them they're not good enough. Hey, you're just good enough for your oil. And even so, going as far as putting caps on their oil now, putting caps on their energy, thinking that's a good thing to do. And Alberta's quite frankly had enough. And that's why we are at the point that we are currently at. And that's why it's really frustrating to see, again, someone from the East saying, we can't talk about separation. Now we got to come together to fight Trump's tariffs. And then that moment, Carney goes down, elbows down. Not a whole lot of fighting on Trump's tariffs happened then, did it? And then you're going to go ahead and villainize Danielle Smith in Alberta for listening to the people and what their grievances are. It's something that Mr. Doug Ford could learn something from, because I know he's been getting his play-by-play from the likes of Justin Trudeau, the play-by-play from Carney of how to tell your citizens how it's going to go down rather than listening to them. And remember we talked about it last week. Mo says, Premier Saskatchewan, Mo says he's Canadian but wouldn't stop vote on Saskatchewan separating from Canada as more separation sentiments are building in Saskatchewan as well. As I said, a national unity crisis you've yet never seen. It's happening more and more every day. Why is Mark Carney becoming so centrist all of a sudden when all of his books, his media appearances, his conversations, things that have been recorded over time fly in the face of the centrist position he's taken? Well, it's because he knows he's got nothing if the country falls apart. So he's going to try and placate in a minority government. He's trying to take all the guns away from the Conservative Party, figuratively and literally. I thought that was kind of funny. And this is the plan. Drum up a good enough sentiment among the people. Make them think that you're centrist. Make them think that you're essentially Poilievre without being Poilievre. And then when you get them, call an election, majority government comes in, and then he actually institutes all the things he's been wanting to institute. That is the long-term plan and something you have to keep an eye out on. Politics is changing with Carney in the fray. I know we're used to politicians being so flagrant and out in the open with what they want to do and how, and the ridiculous measures they want to use against the population. And we've seen Mark Carney do those things in previous media appearances, but now he's prime minister. Now he's got an extra huge magnifying glass on him and he knows what's at stake. He can't institute his ideas, his net zero agenda, if there's no country to apply it to. So he's got to placate. He's going to play the long game and he's going to get everyone's guards down. And it's incumbent upon us to continue to inform people that is the overall plan. People don't just change overnight. And that is the warning. That is the warning. And that's what my point here is. Saskatchewan thinking about separation. And the NDP in Saskatchewan wants to bring in a bill, wants to bring in a law that prevents this idea from even happening. These people are insufferable. Mo said it here, the same as Danielle Smith said. I don't support us separating. However, I will listen to what the people want if that is what they want. And the NDP are like, well, I don't really care what the people want. We're going to tell them that that's not allowed. And that's what they're looking to push. Saskatchewan NDP to introduce anti-separation bill that aims to amend rules. Saskatchewan's opposition NDP is planning to introduce legislation to amend referendum and plebiscite rules in an effort to hold Premier Scott Moe's feet to the fire around talks of separation. Leader Carla Beck's bill, the Referendum and Plebiscite Keep Saskatchewan in Canada Amendment Act, will be put to legislators on Wednesday. The opposition could not provide details as the legislation was not yet before the Assembly. The bill comes as New Democrats accuse Moe's Saskatchewan Party government of pandering to separatist sentiments following Prime Minister Mark Carney's election win for the Liberals. This is the difference between progressives and the Conservatives, right? One is allowing people to have their say. The other is telling people what their say is going to be and not giving them the option to exercise their rights. This is how they operate. This is what they do. So you want to separate. You feel like your last thing you can do is separate. And the government says, no, you're not allowed to even think about that. You're not allowed to even explore that. Not going to happen. Get used to it. Okay. Then you wonder how hot civil war happens in a country. I don't know what else to tell you. If you don't tamper down the emotions, if you don't hear people out, well, then they're going to be on your front door and they're going to be fighting, as we're witnessing consistently, as we witnessed with Israel and Hamas. And this was something that was very interesting from the Black Hawks Reporter. The Heritage Department of the Government of Canada paid a consultant 6 figures to track Twitter and Facebook posts by Friends of Israel. Access to information records show. The surveillance followed Hamas terrorists' October 7th, 2023 killing and kidnapping of Jews in Israel, including 8 Canadians. The project was aimed at assessing the impact of the Israel-Hamas conflict on the online landscape of extremism, hate, and disinformation in Canada, said a project summary. Social media monitors focused on right-wing responses to the conflict and prominent news sources, it said. Tracking criticism of then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was a priority, said the project summary, digital analysis, situation room, and rapid response programming for Israel-Gaza extremism, hate, and misinformation. The Department of Canadian Heritage paid $128,000 for 6 months' worth of work, 6 months worth of social media monitoring by the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, a consultant headquartered in the United Kingdom. And this is what they came to. Canadian Heritage concluded there was an anti-immigration sentiment because they opposed death to Jews at rallies. Because people came out of the woodwork and says, hey, how about you stop saying death to Jews? They then concluded that there's anti-immigration sentiment in the country now because you dare speak out against the protests, which then some turned into riots. That is the Canada we have. Canada we're going to continue to get under Mark Carney, no matter how long he tries to dissipate it, no matter how long he tries to dampen it and try to get through this time of turbulence and tries to hide his true intentions. This is the Canada that Canadians re-elected. So it's interesting to watch. We'll see what happens in Alberta with the referendum talks. We'll see what happens in Saskatchewan about referendum talks, and we'll see if separation sentiments increase. Or will Mark Carney try to even so much as placate Alberta and try to take the emission caps off, take away the resource restrictions, and actually allow them to grow? Even for a period of time, we'll see. We'll see if he plays politics or he tries to continue to put the screws into them, as Stephen Guilbeault would love to do. Anyways, have yourselves a good one. I'm out.